Hi all. Today we'll be dealing with the topic food and feeding in fishes, rather a simple topic but then more diverse. So we'll just see what are the foods preferred by the fish and what their feeding habits. So as you know, what is food? See, food is actually an important component that would sustain life of any organism, be it the humans, be it the fish, be it any other organism. The life of an organism would be sustained by the food. So, we do have certain preferences for food. The same is applicable with the fish, wherein they also do have certain preferences for food. So, we'll just see what are those preferences and what their feeding habit is. Okay, so fishes they exhibit different types of feeding habits, and that would be from simple to even more complex methods. Okay, a simple mechanism wherein they would just take the feed as such, but then it again would be leading to more complex, like the predatory nature. Okay, so simple mechanism would be just the filtering, where fish lives in water. So the simple mechanism would be just filtering the water, wherein they just capture the feed through the water entering into their mouth, and the more or the higher range would be the predatory nature, when they capture the prey, okay, as food. So these feeding habits of fish, they are assessed by various methods. So first one would be either through field observations, wherein you just observe how these fish would take the fish, or else it would be through the gut content analysis, wherein you just dissect out the gut, you just dissect it, you just find out what are the contents that is occurring inside the gut, or maybe it would be through laboratory experiments that you would assess the different feeds preferred by the fish. So based on this, we have different categories of food. As we humans, we take different types of food. Maybe we take rice, maybe fish, maybe chicken, meat, vegetables. So our diet does vary. So similar is the case with fish. It's not that rice, fish that way, but then see this categories of food. The fish, it has got, or it would be feeding on different varieties of food, such as the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, necton, benthos, detritus, etc. Right? So these are the categories of food wherein they, or the fish, they would be feeding either on plankton. Okay, so plankton, they are there's just microscopic organisms which would be drifting with the water current. So if it is of plant origin, we say it as a phytoplankton, and if it is of animal origin, we say it as a zooplankton. Okay, maybe certain crustacean larvae would come under the zooplankton, copepods, etc. And when coming to phytoplankton, you have the diatoms, dinoflagellates, etc. Okay, and necton could also form a food for the fish. Necton meaning they are or they have the capacity of swimming, and this particular group would include the fishes, shrimps, cuttlefishes, squids, etc., wherein these organisms would have the capacity to move about, or ability to move about. And again, benthos would also serve as the food for fish, and benthos are those organisms which are found in the benthic fauna. Okay, and the detritus, and these are usually the dead suspended organic matter, and this would be associated with the rich microbial flora. So these are the different types of food that is being fed by the fish. That is a phytoplankton. It could be either the plankton, the necton, the benthos, or the detritus. Now coming to the classification of food based on its importance to fish. Okay, so based on its importance to fish, it is a classification given by Nikolsky in 1963. So you have, as per this classification, you have the main or the basic food, the occasional or the secondary food, the incidental food, the emergency or the obligatory food. So the main or the basic food, as the name suggests, this would be the main food or the food that is being preferred by the fish as its diet. Okay, so this is a major food that would be eaten by the fish. Okay, and the occasional or secondary food, see, this would come secondary to the first or the main or the basic food. So secondary food is that which is in plenty, and that would be taken by the fish, but it is of second preference when compared to the main or the basic food. Then you have the incidental food. So incidental food is one which accidentally gains an entry into the body of the fish. Okay, so the main food or the basic food, that is the most preferred food by the fish. The secondary food that would be available in plenty, so this would be taken up by the fish. The incidental food which gains accidental entry into the mouth or into the fish, and the emergency or obligatory food. This would be the food that is being taken by the fish during the unfavorable conditions, that is during the absence of maybe the main or the basic food or the secondary food. So this is actually the food which is being taken by the fish during the unfavorable conditions. So these are the fish food preferences. So during the first slide I had explained about the different types of food that is being fed by the fish. So this is fish food preferences, wherein you have the fish being classified into different types as herbivores, the omnivores, the carnivores, the detritivores, the planktivores, etc. So herbivores, those would be the fish which would be feeding on vegetable matter, that is the matter of plant origin. Okay, so the example of which would be the Lepiopimbrata, Lepiorohita, etc. Right, and you have the omnivorous fish. So omnivorous fish is one which would be feeding on variety of it. That is, it would be both the herbivores and it could be either the carnivores also. So combined together, you have the omnivorous fish. So the major example would be the Atropus, that is pearl sport. And you have the carnivorous fishes wherein they would be feeding on other fish. Okay, so these would be examples of this would be Valagueta, the catfish, and all that sort. Then you have the planktivorous fishes. So planktivorous fish is one which would be feeding on plankton. So it could be either feeding on either zooplankton or it would be feeding on phytoplankton. Okay, and then you have the detritivorous which would be feeding on detritus, that is the organic matter available. So this is the classification of fish based on the fish food preferences. So now classification on the basis of trophic niche. So niche is the place or is the area wherein the fish would live. That is a ecological area where the fish would be living. Okay, in simple words. So as per the niche, as per the trophic niche, there is a classification as the surface feeders, the mid-water or collar feeders, and the bottom feeders. So surface feeders, what would be surface feeders? These would be fish which would be feeding from the surface. Okay, so there you have a small picture on the different categories: the surface, the mid-range feeders, and the bottom feeders. So the surface feeders, they would be feeding from the surface. So in that case, they would be, or their mouth would be adapted so that they would capture the feed from the surface. In that way, they would be having an upturned mouth. Okay, and then there is the mid-range feeders. So these would be feeders, or these would be fish that would be living in the column area, the water column area, the middle range, that is in between the surface and the bottom. So here again, as a feeding adaptation, they would be having a mouth that would appear straight. Okay, and you have the bottom feeders. So in bottom feeders, they would be the fish which would be feeding from the bottom. So they would be grazing or maybe other methods. They would be taking the food from the bottom. So they would have a downward turned mouth so as to taking the food from the bottom. Now, again, based on the selection of food type, the fish is classified as the euryphagic, the stenophagic, and the monophagic. So, euryphagic is the term given for those species of fish wherein they would be preferring a mixed diet. Okay, so euryphagic, a wide range of diet, a mixed diet. So they are capable of taking in a mixed diet. So stenophagic, unlike euryphagic, stenophagic, they would be concentrating on a narrow range of food. So they cannot accept a wide range of food, but only a narrow range of food. And again, monophagic fish are those wherein a single food item would be preferred by the fish. Okay, so it's a single item preferred by the fish, the monophagic fish. So euryphagic fish, they would be able to have a mixed diet. The stenophagic, wherein they would be having, or they would have the ability to concentrate only on a narrow range of food, and the monophagic fish, wherein single food would be taken by the fish. Now, based on the manner of capture and ingestion of food, again, there is a classification of fish as predators, the grazers or browsers, the strainers, and the parasitic or suckers. Okay, so predators. So predators, they would be those fish which would be feeding on other fish. Okay, so they would have much higher adaptations for feeding, or rather to say the feeding adaptations, wherein they would be having sharp teeth. So you can see from the picture the sharks, etc., wherein they would have been having the sharp teeth by which they would be able to attack the prey, and they would be feeding on such fish. Okay, maybe fish, mollusks, or crustaceans, or whatever. And the grazers or browsers, so these would be fish which would be grazing. Okay, they would be grazing from the bottom, or they would be browsing on different food items. And then you have the strainers. The strainers are actually the filter feeders, wherein they would be feeding on all those plankton by filtering the water in which they live. And as an adaptation to these fish, they would be having the long gill rakers. Why? Because the water always passes through the gill rakers, and these being filter feeders, their gill rakers would be adapted or would be modified to filter feed all the organisms from the water. And then you have the parasites or the suckers. So parasites, they would be having adaptability to their mouth so that they could attach to the body of the host. Thereby, they would derive the nutrition and oxygen from the body of the host. And these suckers, again, they would be having certain adaptations towards the lower region of their mouth and towards the lower region of the body, by which they would be able to attach to the different substrates, whereby they would derive the nutrition from the attached region. And see, this is all the classification about the different types of feeds we had discussed, the different types of classifications based on their feeding habits. And see, this is just in a nutshell the trophical niche being shown here. So this is a trophical niche wherein you have the primary producers. Then you have the herbivores consumers. So that would be coming in the next level. Then you have the carnivorous consumers. Then again the second level carnivorous consumers, and then the third level and the top carnivores, wherein you have the highly predatory organisms. So this is actually the ecological niche wherein there are the decomposers, and also there are the various types of fish which would be feeding on the different trophic levels. Okay, so they would be either the herbivore species or the omnivore species or the carnivore species. Okay, so they have different feeding habits, and moreover they also have different feeding adaptations to suit their feeding preferences and also to suit their feeding habits. Okay, so that's it. To this we would wind up, and thank you.